and from my perspective, the main priority for getting us switched over to the new dev tool is so that we can start being more proactive about pull requests to you, because we're constantly coming up with new patches, and it really shouldn't, in theory, at this stage, be much work to just fire, for really small patches, for fixes that are kind of, you can just look at the patch and straight away see, oh yeah, that obviously is the right thing, it's easy to review, doesn't necessarily need rigorous testing. And it'd be good that if we could sort of be firing those over to you proactively, even if we're currently unable to do a proper test on 2.0. I think that's going to be a lot.
Is there a reason why it would be difficult for you guys to submit pull requests, or?
No, I think to be honest, it's just inertia, and I don't know.
So Adam, that might be easier if you on Crowbar 2, if you were not if. I understand you want to be 100%, and we want 100. We want everybody in 100% alignment. But you could jump into Crowbar 2, get comfortable there, and that'll make it easier to then go back and start doing the same on 1X. Do you agree with that? Does that make sense?
We could do that, but that's predicated on having a Crowbar 2 environment that we all understand and have sort of standardized on and tested as a team, and we're not there yet, as you know, unfortunately. But like I said, I think that the intention is to very shortly start, building some packages, and see if we can. I don't exactly know what the plan is yet, because it's not my decision. But I've been told that, if someone on the team has some bandwidth, and we can throw out packages and spec files if we want to. I don't think there's anything preventing that from a sort of logistic perspective. So it's just a question of one of us, which I don't know whether it might end up being me or somebody else, just getting that out there, and then we need to build on top of that. But maybe we can use this time as an opportunity to discuss that a bit more, and about, if we were to, for example, publish all our Crowbar and Barcamp spec files, for example, on the Open Build service, so that you could see them and we could start, then we could just update them to use the 2.0 branches in Git and build packages. But then the question is, what would the next stage be? How would we then see, so assuming we've then built some packages for whether it's OpenSUSE or SLAS 11 or both, how do we then go about trying to get those to work and get those tested? Because obviously, your current development and test process is not based on packages. So is that going to be, is it something if you have packages, could you integrate them into the ISO building process and start testing that way?
It probably. That's actually more of a Victor and maybe Greg question. I'd have to think through the implications before I just said yes. What I was wondering along those lines is if it makes sense, if the right people are at the summit, to carve off a little bit of time and just work it out there.
Definitely. I was definitely hoping that would happen. I think that's going to be a great opportunity to sort of solve the problem in an accelerated fashion. We'll have definitely enough of the right people all in one room.
We will too. Including Victor Lothar is going to be at the summit, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
So at the moment, the way you're doing it is the ISO building process just copies the files in directly to the image. Is that right?
Yes, it puts them in the cache locations. There's a actually that's not true. Each bar clamp has a cache of the dependencies that it needs, which is that's the way we have to do it because the bar clamps are independent. So during the build process, it looks for the dependencies out of the metadata for the bar clamp, and it will download them. It caches them in the build, and then during the build process, it copies the dependencies into each bar clamp for packaging. It's not ideal.
Right.
I'm not. Please do not mistake the way we currently do it for a fanatical belief in that being the right way. It supports it supports what we had to do to build an ISO.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So, I mean, when we initially generated the spec files, I wrote a quick script, just a quick hack that just parses the YAML to extract the dependencies from bar clamps, and then those just got imported into the spec files. And obviously, because we don't expect to be frequently writing new bar clamps or changing the dependency tree, I figured that was kind of just a one-shot script to save a bit of manual work, and then in the future, if dependencies change or bar clamps get introduced, then, just hard coding those dependencies in the spec files is a tiny amount of work, so probably could be done manually.
I think the interesting question for us is going to come back to the caching system, which we've been starting design on, so that our question is just a need to pre-populate the data so it's available if the bring up is not online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that I think is the biggest thing to reconcile. It actually, the ISO distribution creates problems over the long term because you can't it's harder to maintain the latest updates in it.
Right. Yeah. And that was one reason why we really wanted to hook into our own sort of automatic. We're building ISOs automatically on a daily basis or more frequently, but the ISO only it's an add-on to SLES rather than the whole of SLES with extra Crowbar stuff. So it kind of slots neatly into our existing framework for building a product, which is an add-on to SLES. So all our standard update mechanisms can be reused. But having said that, we have. I mean, I think it's one thing that SUSE does really well is the whole tool chain for building images in various formats. We have Kiwi, SUSE Studio, and so on. And if you wanted to have your process hook into that tool chain and automatically build a complete appliance or ISO of SLES or OpenSUSE with the latest updates plus Crowbar packages, that shouldn't be too hard to do. I mean, you could, Kiwi makes that easy to script, and you could build it. You can have multiple output formats as like a sort of USB drive style thing, or a live installation, or whatever you want really. And it's just basically from one XML file that says, okay, this is what the image should contain. Here is the URL where you get the latest package updates and so on. So that would not be hard to do given the presence of a public repository with the latest Crowbar packages in. It's just a question because I haven't looked in detail into your ISO building code, so I don't know how much of it would need refactoring or throwing away. Well, obviously not throwing away, but refactoring so that you can keep that distribution agnostic element to it.
And that's the it's important for us to keep it distribution agnostic, but at the same time, if we do want to look at the tools and see what we can do to get the packaging better. USB boot would be great. Actually, I think it would be positive for our field experience, even over the ISO.
Going from ISO boot to USB boot really isn't that big of a deal.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, having the choice is, obviously a nice thing. I guess we can hash this out in, more detail next week. But I guess it's probably just going to be a question of sitting down with the code and just going into the details, really. I mean, like I said, the tool chain is already there. It makes it pretty easy to do. And it's just a question of, how you want to do it. I think definitely the first step is just publishing our spec files and getting packages built automatically for FLES and or OpenSUSE. They might not instantly be usable because they will then expect to consume, OpenStack packages which might have certain requirements, for working on SUSE.
Right. That was part of the reason why for the ship ready list I included the pull from source bar clamp work we'd done.
Right.
So that we can be switched to Folsom before official packages are out.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that we're probably going to do very shortly. We've been talking about that, and I think, I think it's Vincent who will be at the summit. I think he was considering doing that shortly. In fact, he's maybe even started in his home repository. So that may be happening as we speak. Obviously we're interested in looking at Folsom and integrating that into our experiments.
Good. I mean, we have the pull from source bar clamps are they'll be in the trunk of Crowbar 1 in the Fred branch. If they're not there already, they'll be there by the summit.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Well, I think we should. That would be. If there was one thing that I would say, if we had only the opportunity to discuss one thing next week, then that would be it from my point of view.
Okay.
I mean, hopefully we'll have plenty of time to talk about lots of other things as well. But that would be the top priority as far as I can see. Because without sorting that out, we're kind of at a deadlock because obviously it doesn't make sense for you to be spending much more time on 1.x and we need to move forwards. I mean, at the moment we're just we've diverged quite a lot, and that's already causing problems. We come up with fixes and you're not benefiting, and vice versa.
Totally.
Right, and I'm actually personally, obviously, I'm concerned that the fixes are not being fed back to us in some way or fashion. I mean, would you suggest that we actually look at your commits and
Sure. I think, Greg has already done some great stuff on that. I think he's taken some even without, any proactive work from our side, which, I should probably feel slightly guilty about, but I'm kind of happy about as well. But by all means, take, any of the commits there that look good to you at any stage. They're all, out in public on our GitHub account. We don't have anything hidden anywhere else. It's all there, so you can see it right now for sure. I
was hoping that you were going to say no. we'll make sure that we'll establish a process in which we feed them back.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we need to do that as well, definitely. And I think that process, I've already written a tool to compare our stuff with upstream, and to, give a list of commits that we have that are not upstream. It's just a kind of a wrapper around Git Cherry, pretty much, that, iterates over the different bar clamps. I can't remember exactly what I made it to. But so I think we should have a tool like that, and again, that script is on our GitHub. I can send you the link if you want. I think that kind of tool that gives us a quantifiable view onto how diverged or converged we are will be a very central, important part of that whole process, so that, because it means that then people can sort of individually cherry pick things that they, like the look of and think, should be cherry picked into 2.0, regardless of any other work or process going on. But then, Git Cherry will basically figure out, okay, is that already upstream or not? And if it's not, then we'll get a clear view on that. So my vision is that we would basically go through every single commit that is not yet upstream and make a decision one way or the other on, is it going or not. And not all of them will, because unfortunately, we're not perfect, and some of our commits are kind of, we've done things and then made mistakes and had to revert commits and then reintroduce them, or reintroduce a slightly different version of the same commit and so on. So our history isn't clean. It's actually reasonably clean, but it's not pristine. So it will require some manual auditing of what needs to go upstream for sure. And there are some things that just won't make sense anyway. So I had an idea that you could kind of have a blacklist of commits, in any given bar clamp. You could just have a blacklist of SHA, IDs that would say, okay, we're definitely not taking this commit. This one does not need to go upstream. So then the tool would exclude that from the list, from the report, and then we could just work towards shrinking that list of commits which aren't upstream. So just gradually push stuff upstream or add it to the blacklist, and at some point we would hopefully get to an empty list, at which point we know we're basically completely converged.
That's the sort of functionality that I'd like to see integrated into the dev tool.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Victor's in the room with me, by the way, if you didn't recognize his voice.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. If you want, I can point you at that script. I think it's just a really simple shell script. So actually, that would probably be really easy to integrate into the dev tool.
Okay, because I have functionality like that sounds sort of like that figures out what all local changes you have that need to be pushed upstream, and what all changes you have what all changes that upstream has that you don't. And so that sounds like that'd be a pretty straightforward extension of those capabilities. So.
Yeah. I'll get that link right now, actually, before I forget. So does DevTool use Git Cherry at all right now?
I run a little bit lower level than that for the most part. I use Git Revlist a lot, and all of the myriad of flags that it takes. So.
Yeah. I can't remember which part of the path that figures out. That thing how it basically it kind of does generate a hash of the commit that I don't know exactly how it does it. It kind of looks at the diff and the commit message and other things. So even if like the timestamp or the author changes, it can still recognize that it's the same commit. It does something magic like that. I can't remember the details, but I don't know which part of the Git plumbing is responsible for that, but that obviously makes sense for us to use.
Yeah, and that's something that I'd totally be interested in.
Okay, I've just found this script. Should I just paste it in the right-hand side of the Etherpad?
Why don't you just paste it in the main body, and we'll just put a postscript in.
Okay, but we're on 10:04 still, are we?
It should be 10:11.
Oh, 10:11.
10:11. I just added a postscript.
Okay. All right. Oh yeah.
No, even easier. Cool. Do you want to take a couple minutes and go through the ship ready list as a discussion, and then because that had been the original topic. This is great. Don't get me. This is awesome. This is the stuff we have to talk through. Sounds like we lost Adam.
Oh no, I'm just reading the
sorry.
definition.
I'll stop flipping it around. I know you're reading on your own Etherpad, but
yeah, that all looks good. Oh, that was one thing I wanted to ask actually. Do you guys have a roadmap for 2.0 yet? Any kind of release dates or anything like that?
Excellent question. I will defer it to Simon.
The release for 2.0, we're currently, I'm trying to change this, but currently we're actually aligning that with our most major release that's upcoming on the OpenStack side. Think of Q1 February timeframe. Hopefully earlier.
Okay, that's good news. Well, probably. I mean, I'm definitely not the right person to talk to about release roadmaps or anything like that from our end, but I think, yeah, maybe that could work out pretty well. So, obviously, I mean, if our definition of ship readiness for SUSE Cloud 2.0 is going to be affected by this, and I think we're currently trying.
What is your timeline on that?
I don't think it's decided yet. I think it's very much up in the air, and I know there's a lot of debate about what should be going into that and what shouldn't, and we're at the usual stage of product managers wanting more than the engineers think is humanly possible, probably. So I have no idea what's going to happen there. But I think, this kind of definition is going to be very helpful for us in those discussions. And I have mentioned it to our product and project managers who, in discussions about Crowbar 2, I should probably make sure they have greater visibility of this ship ready list, because I think it's going to be very helpful in us clarifying what we want in our 2.0 products as well. So that's again something we can discuss next week. But I'll send a mail out to those people, maybe point them at this Etherpad and just say, hey guys, Dell have done some great work on kind of defining what's in scope and what's out of scope,
and Adam,
and
Adam, I want to make sure. It sounds like you are, but I want to make sure that there's a distinction for us between ship ready and release ready.
Right.
Okay. The ship ready is just there's enough that this is something we could put into an alpha site, start getting towards a beta, start doing evaluations on, making sure it's fit, getting it through QA, things like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, it would be really awesome if we could, synchronize so that we have a ship-ready definition for R2O, and even, I don't know whether we could.
Yeah, this is because I'm expecting that we'll have this list done before, well before the release dates. This is sort of the get it done really fast. This is we're in a until we can show the things on this list. I think we're at risk.
Yeah. I read your blog on ship readiness, and I like it a lot. I agree. That's the way that I like to work personally, and I think our team can probably identify with that a lot as well. I can't speak for everyone else, but I'm pretty sure that we, definitely appreciate the approach of, agility and continuous testing and integration, and yeah.
Okay, good. Sometimes people use those words and they think that means the release. I'm glad that we're aligned. And it's for us. It's still going to be hard to talk on these calls about release dates, which and so we need to Simon's working that process so we can get more clarity around what those are. They're still tangled up with internal Dell releases, and so
right. Yeah, and I think we have the same thing that since this is sort of effectively a public forum kind of community thing, I doubt that we'd be able to discuss that kind of thing in detail on these calls either. But obviously we can, share more with you in a different forum.
Got understood. And I along those lines, I think that we all agree that the goal for Crowbar as a framework underlying those corporate releases needs to be effectively continuously stable. We'll go through release cycles, definitely, as we had features, but one of the things I'd like to see is that we end up where Crowbar a Crowbar release does not become a dependency on, say, an OpenStack release or for us a Hadoop release. That sprint by sprint or maybe month by month, that you can take what's in Crowbar stable and ship with it, ship a solution with it.
All right.
So is there anything on this list specifically that you want to discuss, or it seems like a higher or lower priority than that?
I don't think so. It all looks good to me. Again, it's just something I should make sure that the rest of the team, or at least several other people on the team, have visibility of this and have a think about it, and make sure that if they have any input, that is communicated. That this is it's already covering definitely the kind of stuff that we would care about.
Okay.
There was one question earlier actually that came up on our internal IRC, which might be worth asking. I don't know much about how the networking is going to work with the UCMDB, but one of my colleagues are the plans for 2.0 to support nodes that have a different kind of network from others? For example, like not all being teamed.
Yeah, flexibility in the networking is the reason for the refactor.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I told him, but it's good to know that for sure.
And this is, we're trying to figure out, and there's actually some discussion on networking as part of changing the networking as part of the ship ready list or not. Obviously we're not going to achieve 100% of the improvements we want from the refactoring of the network models in the first pass, but there's a certain base level of, hey, we need to change it so that it's running out of the database instead of a cookbook, or instead of a JSON file, to achieve. And so we're trying to figure out how far down that path we need to go, and how much we want to try and iterate through. So, does that make sense? I'm maybe not being as specific as I'd like to be, because I'm trying to leave it open for discussion, but I don't want to be misinterpreted either.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
It's definitely, of the things in Crowbar, the current network system, while powerful, is definitely our most challenging.
Yeah, I think that's what we've seen from the sort of real world or pseudo real world exposure that we've had so far, in sort of training sessions and so on, and or like documentation teams, wrestling with networking to document it and understand it. That seems to be one of the major areas that will benefit from a revamp.
Yeah, and that's why, to me, it's on the ship ready list. There's Crowbar features that are also very important to our customer base, and what I've heard from the community, like heterogeneous OS, bringing in other CMDBs that aren't on this list, but are clearly very, are major objectives for Crowbar 2 that I still expect will be in the final release. They're just, I don't think they're required for us to have a ship ready product by my definition of ship ready.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not trying to decommit the objectives for Crowbar 2. I'm trying to make sure that we can get the core, the most basic things fielded, and make sure that they work and they're stable before we start turning more knobs.
Yeah. Makes sense.